On a bewilderingly perplexing Friday afternoon, amidst the enigmatic ambience of Phoenix, Arizona, Marion Crane and her paramour, Sam Loomis, find themselves entangled in a clandestine rendezvous at a hotel. The clandestinity of their affair finally takes its toll on Marion, who expresses her weariness of their sordid encounters. Sam, a proprietor of a humble hardware store in Fairvale, California, attempts to reassure her by proclaiming that once he settles his debts, they can solemnize their union. Alas, Marion yearns for immediate acceptance and legitimacy in her life. Upon returning to the labyrinthine confines of the real estate office where she toils as a secretary, Marion stumbles upon her boss, George Lowery, engaged in conversation with the affluent oil magnate, Tom Cassidy. As the men eventually return, the lascivious Cassidy boasts to Marion about his extravagant purchase of a house for his daughter, proudly divulging that he has doled out a staggering $40,000 in cold, hard cash. Fearing for the security of such a substantial sum over the weekend, Lowery instructs Marion to take it to the bank, granting her the liberty to head home afterward. After repelling Cassidy's advances once again, Marion departs the office premises, only to surreptitiously stash the money within her purse, swiftly followed by her departure with a suitcase in tow. The weariness from her arduous journey eventually overcomes her, coercing her to seek respite along a desolate stretch of road, where she succumbs to a profound slumber. The tranquility of her rest is abruptly shattered on Saturday morning by the intrusive presence of a highway patrolman, perturbed by her irritable demeanor. As the policeman dismisses her, Marion, consumed by anxiety that her encounter may not be forgotten, impulsively decides to alter her fate by trading her vehicle, now bearing California license plates, at a used car lot. Later, amidst an unforgiving tempestuous downpour, Marion inadvertently misses the turnoff to Fairvale, leading her to seek refuge at the Bates Motel, a peculiar establishment overseen by the proprietor, Norman Bates. Norman extends a seemingly warm welcome to Marion and kindly offers to prepare dinner for her at his eerie abode, a foreboding structure looming atop the hill adjacent to the motel. Intrigued by his peculiar hospitality, Marion accepts his invitation, yet unbeknownst to her, she unwittingly conceals the stolen money within a newspaper she had recently acquired. To her astonishment, while in the process of surreptitiously stowing away the cash, she overhears a vehement altercation between Norman and an elderly woman vehemently berating him for bringing a girl into her home. Unfazed, Norman returns with sandwiches, assuaging Marion's concerns by revealing his mother's delicate state of mind. With a touch of unease, Marion follows Norman into his parlor, tucked away behind the motel's office, where her senses are promptly accosted by the sight of Norman's peculiar taxidermy collection, stuffed birds frozen in time. Engaging in conversation, Marion attempts to bridge the gap with the introverted Norman, who candidly confides in her about his profound solitude, his mother being his only constant companion. Marion, driven by curiosity, inquires about Norman's acquaintances, to which he eerily responds that a boy's best friend is his mother, albeit acknowledging his secret yearning to escape, much like Marion herself. Norman divulges his steadfast belief that everyone is ensnared in their own intricate web of predicaments, attributing his mother's mental instability to the traumatic demise of could lead a life of his own if he sought professional help and placed his mother in an institution. However, the mere suggestion sends shivers down Norman's spine, triggering a bitter reaction as he vehemently defends his mother's harmlessness and proclaims his unwavering loyalty towards her. In a moment of relaxation, Norman utters the haunting words, "We all go a little mad sometimes," as the realization of her own descent into madness dawns upon her. Marion confides in Norman, sharing her desperate need to break free from her personal trap. She expresses her intention to return to Phoenix in a bid to escape her self-imposed confinement. With a heavy heart, Marion retreats to her room, blissfully unaware of Norman's voyeuristic gaze fixed upon her as he peeks through a concealed peephole. While Marion sits down to calculate the extent of the stolen money she has already spent, a resolute Norman marches towards the imposing Bates house, determined to assert himself. However, his determination wanes, leaving him despondent as he sits dejectedly at the kitchen table. In a moment of unexpected resolve, Marian tears up the note, discarding it by flushing it down the toilet, symbolizing her choice to abandon her ill-fated path. She then proceeds to step into the shower, seeking solace in the cascading water. Little does Marian know that a shadowy figure has stealthily entered the bathroom, shrouded in darkness. The figure mercilessly plunges a knife into Marian repeatedly, bringing an abrupt end to her troubled journey. Minutes later, in the eerie confines of the Bates house, Norman's anguished cries reverberate as he calls out to his mother, recoiling at the sight of blood, only to discover Marian lifeless on the cold, tiled floor. Overwhelmed by revulsion yet steadfast in his determination to protect his mother, Norman wraps Marian's lifeless body in the shower curtain. He meticulously cleans the room, eradicating any traces of the macabre incident, before carefully placing her belongings and corpse in the trunk of her car. Unaware of the concealed fortune held within the discarded newspaper, Norman callously tosses it into the vehicle before submerging it in the murky depths of the swamp that engulfs the property. A week passes, and Sam finds himself penning a letter to Marian. Interrupted by the unexpected arrival of her sister, Lila, a stranger to him until now. Bewildered by Lila's frantic inquiries about Marian's whereabouts, Sam's innocence is tested as private investigator Milton Arbogast enters the scene. Arbogast, joined by Lila, reveals the truth of Marian's theft, casting a skeptical eye upon Sam as a potential accomplice. Determined to find answers, Arbogast embarks on a 2-day search, leading him to the foreboding Bates Motel. There, he confronts Norman, who stumbles through his lies before reluctantly admitting to Marian's presence at the motel. While Arbogast senses the truth, his desire to question Mrs. Bates is met with Norman's vehement resistance, pushing him to leave the premises. Haunted by uncertainty, Arbogast contacts Lila, divulging his findings and expressing his intent to interrogate Mrs. Bates before returning to Fairvale. However, fate takes a grim turn as Arbogast ascends the staircase within the Bates house, falling victim to a relentless female assailant, stabbed to his demise. Norman, consumed by panic, disposes of Arbogast's car in the treacherous swamp, while Lila's concern mounts in Fairvale. Finally, accompanied by Sam, she turns to Deputy Sheriff Al Chambers for assistance. Skepticism colors Chambers' response, dismissing Lila. As he dismisses Lila's concerns, particularly when she mentions Mrs. Bates, Chambers proceeds to recount the tragic tale of Norman's mother poisoning her lover and subsequently committing suicide 10 years prior. His phone call to Norman only serves to confirm that Arbogast left abruptly, leaving Lila anxious and desperate for answers. Driven by determination, Lila and Sam make their way to the Bates Motel, checking in under the pretense of innocent guests. Seizing the opportunity, Lila sneaks into Marian's former room, hoping to uncover any clues. It is there that she discovers a torn fragment of the paper on which Marian had written her calculations. With mounting conviction that Norman has harmed Marian in pursuit of the stolen money, Sam confronts him in the office while Lila continues her investigation, determined to find Mrs. Bates. Meanwhile, Norman, irritated by Sam's accusations, retreats to his parlor. The atmosphere is tense as Sam mentions Norman's mother, triggering a violent response. In a sudden act of aggression, Norman knocks Sam unconscious, temporarily silencing his accuser. Undeterred, Lila continues her exploration of the Bates house, her heart pounding with trepidation. She stumbles upon Mrs. Bates's immaculate bedroom, where the impression of a body remains on the bed, frozen in time. With trembling steps, Lila ventures further into Norman's squalid living quarters, surrounded by the relics of his tormented childhood. Returning to the ground floor, Lila catches sight of Norman's approach to the house. Fear grips her as she hides, her heart racing. Norman ascends the stairs, and Lila silently descends to the cellar, her curiosity and dread intertwining. There, she discovers Mrs. Bates seated with her back to the door, an unsettling sight that sends shivers down Lila's spine. Summoning every ounce of courage, she cautiously moves closer, intending to tap the old woman on the shoulder. In a horrifying twist, Mrs. Bates whirls around, revealing a decaying corpse. Lila's scream echoes through the cellar, punctuating her terror. But the nightmare is far from over. Before her stands Norman, donned in a wig and one of his mother's dresses, his eyes burning with madness. He shrieks, "I am Norma Bates," lunging towards Lila with a gleaming knife, his mind utterly consumed. In a moment of salvation, Sam arrives just in time to overpower Norman, sparing Lila from a tragic fate. The Bates Motel, once a place of secrets and horror, now witnesses the demise of its disturbed proprietor. Days later, as Sam, Lila, and law enforcement officials gather at the courthouse, Norman sits alone in a nearby room, wrapped in a blanket, his shattered psyche exposed. Dr. Richmond, a psychiatrist, examines him, revealing the grim truth of Norman's existence. Afflicted by a split personality disorder, Norman has succumbed entirely to the dominant persona of his mother. Driven by guilt and the memory of his domineering mother, Norman has become a vessel for her twisted desires. The psychiatrist proclaims that Norman Bates is no more. In a haunting coda, Norman's mother side contemplates her fate. Observing a fly land on her hand, she cunningly declares that she will not harm it, using the gesture as a symbolic defense against accusations of violence. The boundaries between sanity and madness, guilt and innocence, remain blurred within the fractured mind of Norman Bates, forever imprisoned by the ghost of his mother's vengeful presence.